Have you ever caught yourself lost inside your own head, tangled in a storm of thoughts you couldn't seem to escape? It starts so simply. Maybe you're sitting alone trying to relax when suddenly a thought appears. What if I fail? Or I'm not good enough? You don't invite it, you don't plan it, but there it is, unshakable, circling like a bird of prey. The more you try to push it away, the stronger it comes back. You wrestle with it, you fight it. You try to bury it under distractions or silence it with positive affirmations. But somehow, no matter how hard you resist, the thought keeps returning, louder, sharper, more convincing than before. And that's when you begin to wonder, am I the problem? Am I my thoughts? This is the trap so many of us fall into. We confuse the voice in our head with the essence of who we are. We believe that because a thought shows up, it must be true, that because it lingers, it must have power. And yet, what if I told you something radically different? What if your thoughts are not enemies to conquer, not truths to bow down to, but simply passing visitors? Imagine standing on the sidewalk of a busy street. Cars race by, horns blaring, engines roaring. Some are flashy, some are broken down, some speed recklessly, others barely move. You see them, you hear them, but do you jump into the road to stop them? Do you chase after every single car? Of course not. You just watch them pass, and eventually the street clears. That street is your mind, those cars are your thoughts, and you're the observer. The struggle begins when you forget that, when you step off the sidewalk trying to control traffic that was never yours to control. You chase, you block, you fight until you're exhausted, crushed beneath the chaos. But peace, real, lasting peace, comes the moment you realize you were never meant to stop the traffic. You were meant to step back, breathe, and simply see. For centuries, great teachers in Buddhism have spoken about this. They tell us suffering is born not from the thoughts themselves, but from clinging to them, wrestling with them, letting them define us. They remind us that every thought is impermanent. It comes, it stays a moment, and then it dissolves, like clouds drifting across a vast open sky. So why do we suffer? Because we identify with the clouds and forget the sky. This opening is an invitation, not to destroy your thoughts, not to pretend they don't exist, but to shift your relationship with them entirely, to stop fighting and start seeing, to trade struggle for awareness, resistance for compassion, chaos for clarity. If you've ever felt tired of battling your own mind, if you've ever wished for silence but only found more noise, if you've ever wondered whether peace is even possible, this journey will show you another way. A way not of force but of freedom, because you are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. And once you truly understand that, life begins to open in a way you've never imagined. So here's a question that shakes the ground beneath us. What exactly is a thought? We spend our lives listening to them, arguing with them, obeying them, even fearing them. Yet very few people ever pause long enough to ask, what are these things that seem to control my entire world? A thought has no shape, no color, no weight. You cannot hold it in your hands, you cannot lock it in a box, and yet it feels powerful enough to ruin your entire day. One sentence in your head, I'm not good enough, can send you spiraling into doubt, sadness, or despair. Another sentence, they don't love me, can break your heart before a single word is spoken out loud. Isn't it strange that something so intangible can feel more real than the chair you're sitting on? But here's the truth that the Buddha pointed to long ago. A thought is simply a mental event, nothing more. Like the ripple on the surface of a pond, it appears, it moves, and it fades. It may feel intense in the moment, but it has no solid core. It is not who you are. The problem is, we rarely see thoughts for what they are. Instead, we wrap stories around them. A single anxious thought arises. What if I fail this interview? And instantly the mind begins to build a whole movie. Images of rejection, feelings of shame, predictions of a ruined future. One small ripple becomes a tidal wave. And before we know it, we're drowning in an ocean we created ourselves. Let me tell you a story. There was once a monk who lived at the edge of a small village. Every evening he would sit quietly outside his hut watching the sunset. The villagers admired his calm presence, but one young man was curious. He asked, "Master, don't you ever get angry thoughts, fearful thoughts, or desires?" The monk smiled. "Of course I do," he said. They come like visitors knocking at my door, but I do not invite them in for tea. That's the essence of it. A thought is only a visitor. It can knock, it can call your name, it can even pound on the door. But it is you who decides whether to open the door, pull up a chair, and start a long conversation, or simply notice the sound, smile, and let it fade away. Modern science echoes this ancient wisdom. Neuroscientists say the average human mind produces between 60,000 and 80,000 thoughts a day. Imagine that. If you tried to analyze or wrestle with each one, you'd go insane. Most of these thoughts are repetitive, recycled fragments from yesterday or last week. They're not fresh truths, they are echoes. And yet we give them so much power. So what is the true nature of a thought? It is temporary, it is conditioned, it is not the ultimate truth, and above all, it is not you. Think of it this way: the sky does not become dirty because of passing clouds. A lake does not lose its depth because of ripples on the surface. Likewise, your being, your deeper awareness, is not stained by a passing thought. The thought may be angry, jealous, fearful, or sad, but you remain the sky, you remain the lake. The thought is only movement across the surface. And here lies the freedom. Once you see thoughts as passing phenomena, their grip loosens. You no longer need to fight them because you understand they were never solid in the first place. But there's one more secret. Thoughts are persuasive storytellers. They speak in your own voice. They pretend to be you. That's why they feel so convincing. The mind whispers, "I can't do this. I'm worthless. I'll never change." And because the voice sounds like your own, you believe it, you fuse with it, you become it. Yet pause for just a moment. Who is it that notices the voice? Who is it that hears the thought, "I'm worthless"? If you can hear it, that means you are not identical to it. You are the listener, not the voice. You are the sky, not the cloud. This recognition is the turning point. When you begin to observe thoughts instead of becoming them, everything shifts. The anxious thought may still arise, but instead of spiraling into panic, you might simply smile and say, "Ah, here's my anxious visitor again." The angry thought may still knock, but you'll notice, "There's anger at the door. I don't need to let it in." That's the power of understanding the nature of thoughts. They are not enemies. They are not masters. They are fleeting events, like echoes in a canyon, like ripples in water, like birds crossing the open sky. And once you see them clearly, you realize, peace does not come from fighting your thoughts. Peace comes from watching them with gentle awareness, knowing they cannot define who you truly are. By now you can probably sense it. Thoughts are not solid, they're not permanent, and they're not truly you. But here's where most of us stumble. We hear this wisdom, we nod our heads, and then the very next moment, a storm of thoughts appears, and we do the one thing guaranteed to make it worse. We fight them. Think about it. How many times have you said to yourself, "I need to stop thinking this way. I shouldn't be having these thoughts. I need to silence my mind." It sounds noble, even disciplined, but what happens? The harder you push against a thought, the stronger it becomes. It's like trying to push a beach ball underwater. You press it down with all your strength, but the more you force it, the more energy builds beneath the surface, until suddenly it bursts back up, splashing you in the face. That's what happens when you resist your mind. You think you're controlling it, but really, you're feeding it power. There's a famous psychological experiment that proves this. Participants were told, "For the next 5 minutes, do not think about a white bear. Whatever you do, do not imagine a white bear." What do you think happened? Their minds were flooded with white bears. The very act of trying not to think about something made it impossible to escape. This is exactly how we live. We try not to think about the past, but the past keeps haunting us. We try not to feel anxious about the future, but the future grows bigger in our imagination. We fight the thought, and the thought tightens its grip. But why does this happen? Because resistance is still a form of attention. When you declare war on a thought, you are still obsessed with it. You may be pushing it away, but you're also holding onto it with both hands. And in doing so, you give it a kind of twisted importance. The mind interprets your struggle as proof. If this thought requires such effort to fight, it must be real, it must be dangerous, it must define me. Let's bring this down to everyday life. Imagine you're trying to fall asleep, but suddenly a worrying thought creeps in. What if I mess up at work tomorrow? You toss and turn, telling yourself, stop thinking about it. I need to sleep. I can't let this thought ruin my night. And what happens? The thought grows louder. You end up wide awake, battling the very thing you wanted to silence. Or maybe you're in meditation. You sit down, close your eyes, and immediately the mind begins. Did I send that email? What's for dinner? Why am I even sitting here? You get frustrated. I'm supposed to be calm. Why can't I clear my mind? Why do these thoughts keep coming? And instead of peace, meditation becomes another battleground. This is the mistake so many of us make. We treat our mind like an enemy. We treat thoughts like weeds to be ripped out. But here's the secret. The more you fight, the more you fertilize them. Buddhism offers a radically different approach. The Buddha never said, crush your thoughts. He never said, silence the mind by force. Instead, he taught awareness. He taught that thoughts, like all things, are impermanent. They rise and they fall. And our suffering comes not from the thought itself, but from the grasping, the resisting, the endless war we wage inside. A Zen teacher once put it this way: when you fight with a ghost, you always lose. Not because the ghost is strong, but because the ghost was never real. So let's be honest. Fighting thoughts doesn't work. It never has. It only leaves you more tired, more entangled, more convinced that you are broken. But what if there's another way, a softer way, a way that doesn't involve struggle at all, but awareness, compassion, and freedom? That shift, the move from resistance to gentle observation, is where true transformation begins. So if fighting our thoughts only feeds them, what do we do instead? The answer sounds almost too simple. We observe, not with judgment, not with resistance, just awareness, like watching clouds drift across the sky. This is the new attitude, the shift that turns the battlefield of the mind into a place of quiet observation. Imagine sitting by a river. The water flows, carrying leaves, twigs, maybe even debris. You don't have to dive in and pull them out. You don't have to dam the river or fight the current. You simply sit and watch the flow. That's how you treat your thoughts. But here's the subtlety most people miss: observation without judgment. Because the moment you say, this is a bad thought, I shouldn't be thinking this, you've already left observation and slipped back into resistance. True awareness is more spacious. It doesn't label. It doesn't condemn. It just notices. Here is a thought. Here is another. Now it's gone. Buddhism calls this practice citta anupassana, mindfulness of the mind. It's about seeing thoughts as mental events, not as truths, not as threats, not as who you are. Just events arising and passing like weather. Think about a thunderstorm. If you sit by the window and say, this storm is evil, it shouldn't be here, you only increase your suffering. But if you sit quietly and notice the rain, the lightning, the thunder, you realize the storm is just a storm. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The same is true of every thought you've ever had. Let me give you a real story. A student once came to a Zen master complaining, my meditation is terrible, I keep getting distracted, thoughts keep coming, I can't stop them. The master simply asked, and what happens when you try to stop them? The student sighed, they only get stronger. The master smiled and said, then stop trying to stop them. Instead, bow to them. Say hello. Let them come and let them go like honored guests, but don't serve them tea. That last line is brilliant. Don't serve them tea. Thoughts will come. You can't control that, but you don't have to invite them in, feed them, and let them stay the night. You simply notice their arrival and allow their departure. This attitude of gentle observation does something remarkable. It creates space. When you no longer react to every thought as if it's urgent, you begin to sense the silence underneath. The mind may chatter, but you are not the chatter. You are the space in which the chatter happens. And that space is peaceful, unshaken, free. Try this in your daily life. Next time a self-critical thought arises, maybe, I'm not good enough, instead of fighting it or believing it, simply say, here is the thought of not being good enough. Notice how that simple shift pulls you out of identification. It's no longer, I am not good enough. It's just a thought about not being good enough. And soon enough, like every thought, passes. Science backs this up too. Studies on mindfulness show that when people observe their thoughts without judgment, the brain's stress response decreases, anxiety softens, emotional regulation improves. Why? Because the mind is no longer locked in battle, it's at rest, simply watching. This new attitude is not cold detachment, it's compassion. It's saying to yourself, I don't need to punish myself for thinking. I don't need to be perfect. I can allow my humanity, and in that allowance find freedom. In Zen monasteries, monks often compare thoughts to visitors knocking on the door. Some visitors are pleasant, some are annoying, some are frightening. But the master of the house doesn't have to chase them away with weapons. He simply sees them, acknowledges them, and allows them to leave when their time is done. That's mindfulness. That's non-judgment. And here's the most surprising part. When you stop resisting, thoughts lose their grip. They come, they go, but they don't control you. You no longer live at the mercy of the mind. Instead, you rest in awareness, the awareness that holds everything but clings to nothing. This is the heart of the practice, observation without judgment, and it's not just for meditation cushions. It's for the subway ride, the work meeting, the sleepless night. Anytime, anywhere, you can step back and notice. Thoughts are here. I don't need to fight. I don't need to judge. I just need to see. That seeing is liberation in itself. So if observation without judgment is the doorway, mindfulness is the key that opens it wide. Because mindfulness isn't just a practice, it's a way of living. It's the art of being fully present, aware of this moment without being pulled into yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's fears. Think of how most of us live. We walk down the street, but we don't notice the street. Our minds are replaying old arguments, imagining future problems, scrolling through endless worries. We eat, but we don't taste. We breathe, but we don't feel the breath. Life slips past us like water through cupped hands because we're never actually here. Mindfulness changes that. It teaches us to return to this moment again and again. Not to escape thoughts, but to anchor ourselves in something deeper, something steady, the raw experience of now. Let me share a story. A monk once asked his teacher, "Master, what is mindfulness?" The teacher replied, "When walking, walk. When eating, eat. When working, work. When resting, rest." The monk frowned. "But isn't that too simple?" The master smiled. "Simple, yes, but not easy. That's the essence. Mindfulness is simple but not easy because the mind always wants to wander. Yet every time we notice the wandering and gently return, we build strength. It's like training a muscle. The more we practice, the steadier our awareness becomes. Now, why is mindfulness so powerful? Because it breaks the cycle of automatic reaction. Normally, a thought appears and we react instantly. An insult arises and anger follows. A worry appears and anxiety floods in. We live like puppets yanked around by every mental string. But with mindfulness, there's a pause, a sacred pause. You notice, anger is here. And in that noticing, you create space between the thought and your response. You're no longer trapped in autopilot. You can choose, you can breathe. You can act with clarity instead of compulsion. Science confirms this. Brain scans of long-term meditators show that mindfulness strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for awareness and choice, while calming the amygdala, the center of fear and reactivity. In other words, mindfulness literally rewires the brain for peace. But beyond science, there's the lived experience. Mindfulness turns ordinary moments into sacred ones. Drinking tea is no longer just drinking tea. It's feeling the warmth of the cup, tasting the subtle flavors, hearing the quiet around you. Walking is no longer just getting from one place to another. It's sensing your feet touch the earth, the rhythm of your breath, the vastness of the sky overhead. When you live like this, something shifts. Thoughts may still come, but they don't drag you away. Emotions may still arise, but they don't drown you. You're anchored in presence, steady like a mountain, fluid like a river. And here's the real power. Mindfulness reveals the impermanence of everything. When you sit quietly watching your breath, you notice how each inhale arises, passes, and dissolves. Each thought does the same, each feeling too. You begin to understand, not intellectually but directly, that nothing lasts. And in that understanding, clinging loosens, fear softens, freedom expands. Imagine living a life where every moment is alive, vivid, unmissed. Imagine being free from the endless tug-of-war with your thoughts, resting instead in the simplicity of now. That is the gift of mindfulness. It doesn't remove all storms. It teaches you how to stand calmly in the middle of them, umbrella in hand, watching the rain with a quiet smile. If mindfulness shows us how to be present, then suffering shows us why presence matters. Because let's be honest, pain is not optional. Everyone, no matter how rich, how strong, or how wise, will face it. We lose people we love, we get sick. Dreams collapse, the body ages, even our own mind sometimes turns against us. The Buddha called this the first noble truth: life includes suffering. And at first it sounds heavy, it sounds like bad news, but in reality, it's the doorway to transformation. Because suffering, when met with awareness, becomes the soil in which wisdom grows. Think of a seed. In the dark, buried under heavy soil, it breaks open. That breaking might look like destruction, but it's actually the beginning of life. Without that pressure, without that darkness, the seed could never grow into a tree. Our suffering works the same way. It cracks us open so that something deeper can emerge. But most of us don't see it that way. We resist. We say, "Why me? This shouldn't be happening. I can't handle this." We try to escape pain, numb it, deny it. And in doing so, we miss the gift hidden inside. Let me tell you a story. A young man once came to a Zen master, heartbroken after losing everything: his job, his relationship, his sense of purpose. He said, "Master, my suffering is too great. I feel like I'm drowning." The master handed him a handful of salt and said, "Put this into a glass of water and drink." The young man did. The water tasted bitter. Then the master led him to a lake. "Now throw the salt into the lake." The young man obeyed. "Drink from the lake," the master said. He did, and the water tasted fresh. The master looked at him and said, "The salt is your suffering. The size of the container is your mind. When your heart is small, your suffering feels bitter. When your heart expands, suffering is still there, but it no longer poisons you. It becomes part of something larger." That's the hidden power of suffering. It forces us to expand. It teaches us compassion. It softens our pride. It deepens our humanity. It reminds us of what truly matters. Think about your own life. How many of your greatest lessons came not from comfort, but from hardship? How many times did failure lead you to strength? How many times did loss open your eyes to love you had taken for granted? Pain carves out space inside us, and that space becomes the room where wisdom and empathy can live. This doesn't mean we should go looking for suffering or glorify it. It means when it arrives, as it always does, we can meet it differently. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid this?" we can ask, "What is this teaching me? How can this pain shape me into someone deeper, kinder, freer?" In Buddhism, this is known as turning poison into medicine. The same event that could make us bitter can also make us wise. The difference lies not in the suffering itself, but in how we hold it. With resistance, suffering hardens the heart. With mindfulness, suffering opens it. And here's the most beautiful part. When we learn to hold our own suffering with awareness and compassion, we naturally begin to hold the suffering of others the same way. We realize we are not alone in our pain. Every human heart carries its own weight. And in that recognition, we grow gentler, more patient, more loving. So yes, suffering hurts. It breaks us. But sometimes in the breaking, the light enters. Sometimes, the very thing we wanted to avoid becomes the very thing that makes us whole. And when you see suffering not as punishment, but as a path, life itself begins to feel different. Less like a cruel game, more like a great unfolding. Each joy, each sorrow, each challenge becomes part of the same journey toward wisdom. Sometimes words and teachings feel distant, beautiful ideas, but hard to live. That's why stories matter. They carry wisdom straight to the heart, bypassing the endless arguments of the mind. Let me share one with you. There was once a monk traveling with his fellow disciple. They were walking along a muddy road after heavy rain when they came to a village. At the edge of the road stood a young woman in fine clothes, stranded. The mud was too deep, and she was afraid of ruining her silk dress. The older monk, without hesitation, lifted her onto his back and carried her across. He set her down gently, bowed, and continued walking. Hours passed in silence. Finally, the younger disciple could no longer hold his tongue. He burst out, "How could you do that? We are monks. We're not supposed to touch women. You broke the rule." The elder monk looked at him calmly and said, "Brother, I put her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" And in that moment, the younger disciple realized he had been carrying the woman in his mind the entire journey. His judgment, his anger, his clinging to rules had become a far heavier burden than the woman herself. This story may sound simple, almost too simple, but think about it. How often do we do the same thing? Something happens, someone insults us, life disappoints us, we make a mistake, and even after the moment has passed, we keep carrying it. We replay it, relive it, hold on to it as if clinging to the pain could somehow change what already is. But the truth is, we suffer not because of the event itself, but because of our unwillingness to put it down. The insult lives only for seconds, but our mind keeps it alive for years. The mistake itself was brief, but our shame stretches it into a lifetime sentence. What the elder monk teaches us is this: the real freedom comes not in avoiding mud, but in not carrying the mud with us. Notice how this connects to suffering and growth. Life will always give us muddy roads. We cannot escape that, but we can choose how long we carry the mud inside. We can let suffering harden us, or let it go and allow it to teach us instead. Mindfulness is what makes that letting go possible. Because when you are mindful, you notice, I'm still carrying this. That simple awareness is the first step in setting the burden down. Without awareness, you walk miles with unnecessary weight. With awareness, you stop, breathe, and release. This story lingers because it speaks to something we all know deep down. We've all carried people, events, regrets far longer than needed. And maybe right now, there's something you've been carrying too. Ask yourself, is it time to put it down? Letting go doesn't erase the past. It doesn't deny what happened. It simply means you stop letting yesterday steal today. The older monk showed us how to do this with grace, with compassion, with presence. And that's why the story is timeless. It's not about monks and women and rules. It's about you and me and the choice we face every day, to keep carrying or to let go. It's one thing to hear a story about monks on a muddy road. It's another to face your own muddy roads every single day. Traffic jams, deadlines, bills, family conflicts, sleepless nights. So how do we take this wisdom out of the monastery and bring it into our living rooms, our offices, our busy, messy lives? The answer is simple but profound. Practice letting go moment by moment. Think about your morning routine. You wake up, check your phone, and there it is. A message that upsets you, an email that pressures you, news that makes you anxious. Instantly, the day feels heavy. But right there in that first moment, you have a choice. You can carry the weight all day, or you can pause, breathe, and say, "This is here. I acknowledge it. And now I set it down." It doesn't mean ignoring responsibilities. It doesn't mean pretending problems don't exist. It means not letting your mind add extra layers of suffering. You handle what needs to be handled, but you don't carry the mud any longer than necessary. Here's a practice you can try. Throughout the day, whenever you feel stuck in a thought loop, anger, worry, self-criticism, ask yourself, am I still carrying this? That simple question shines light on the burden, and once you see it, you can choose to release it. Imagine driving in traffic. Someone cuts you off. Instantly, frustration flares. Without awareness, you'll carry that anger home. Slam the door, snap at your family. But with awareness, you notice the anger rise like a spark. You breathe, you realize, here's a storm passing through. And in that moment, you don't let the spark turn into wildfire. You set it down, you drive on in peace. Or think of relationships. Someone close to you says something hurtful. The instinct is to replay their words over and over, feeding the wound. But with mindfulness, you can step back. You can see their words as clouds, not as eternal truths. You can feel the pain, yes, but also choose not to live inside it forever. That's how forgiveness begins, not by forcing it, but by refusing to carry the weight any longer. Even in the simplest tasks, mindfulness and letting go transform everything. Washing dishes isn't just another chore. It becomes a meditation on presence, on feeling the warm water, the smooth plates, the rhythm of your breath. Walking isn't just moving from point A to B. It's touching the earth with awareness. Each step a reminder that you are alive, here, now. Daily life doesn't need to be escaped. It needs to be embraced with presence. And the more you practice in small moments, the more strength you'll have in big ones. When real storms come, loss, illness, uncertainty, you'll already know how to stand steady, how to breathe, how to let go without collapsing. The Buddha once said, "Little by little, one becomes filled with wisdom, just as a jar is filled with water drop by drop." That's how daily practice works. Each mindful breath, each act of letting go is a drop. It may seem small, but over time the jar fills. The mind becomes clearer, the heart becomes lighter. And here's the beauty: you don't need perfect silence or hours of meditation to practice. You just need awareness. Folding laundry, listening to a loved one, even sipping coffee, all of it can be practice. Every moment is an opportunity to observe, to release, to return to presence. So when life feels heavy, remember, you don't have to carry it all. You can set some of it down right here, right now. And when you do, you'll discover a lightness that was always waiting for you. The lightness of simply living, fully and freely in this moment. When you begin practicing mindfulness, when you learn to let go, the first thing you notice is a shift inside yourself. The storms in your mind grow quieter. The heavy burdens start to feel lighter. Suffering doesn't disappear, but it stops controlling you. This is the stage of healing, and healing is beautiful. It's the breath of relief after years of struggle. It's the joy of realizing you don't have to be a prisoner of your own thoughts anymore. But the journey doesn't end there, because true healing naturally blossoms into something greater, the desire to serve. Why? Because when your own heart softens, you can finally feel the hearts of others. When you've walked through the fire of suffering, you can recognize the flames in someone else's eyes. You no longer look at another person's pain as their problem. You see it as a shared human experience. And that recognition opens the door to compassion. Think about it. The people who inspire us most are not those who avoided suffering, but those who transformed it. The survivor who uses their story to give others hope. The elder who carries decades of hardship with wisdom and grace, guiding the younger generation. The teacher who once struggled and now helps others find freedom. Their power doesn't come from perfection. It comes from scars turned into strength. In Buddhism, this is the path of the Bodhisattva, the one who seeks awakening not just for themselves, but for all beings. It doesn't mean you have to become a saint or renounce the world. It means that the healing you cultivate within naturally overflows into the lives of others. Sometimes it's as simple as presence. Listening deeply to a friend who feels unseen, offering kindness to a stranger who seems invisible, choosing patience with someone who lashes out, knowing their anger comes from their own wounds. These acts may seem small, but they ripple outward. Other times, service means sharing what you've learned, not preaching, not forcing, but embodying. When people see you calmer, kinder, more grounded, they notice, they ask. And in your words, in your example, you offer them a path too. And here's the secret. Service doesn't drain you, it completes you. Because the more you give, the more connected you feel. The walls between me and you start to dissolve. Life feels less like a private struggle and more like a shared journey. And that sense of connection is one of the deepest sources of joy. Remember the story of the salt in the lake. Your suffering is the salt, your heart the container. Healing expands the heart enough to hold your own suffering. Service expands it even further, enough to hold the suffering of others too. And in that vastness, bitterness dissolves into compassion. Of course, this doesn't mean ignoring your own needs. You cannot pour from an empty cup. That's why healing comes first, learning to breathe, to let go, to find balance within. But once the cup is filled, the most natural thing in the world is to let it overflow. So maybe ask yourself, how can my healing become someone else's hope? How can my freedom plant a seed of freedom in another? It doesn't need to be dramatic. Sometimes the most powerful service is simply living with an open heart in a world that often forgets how. When you live this way, even ordinary actions, sharing a smile, offering a kind word, being patient with yourself and others, become acts of service. Your life becomes a quiet lantern, shining not only for you, but for everyone walking in the dark. As we come to the end of this journey, take a moment to breathe. Think of everything we've explored together, the nature of thoughts, the futility of fighting them, the power of mindfulness, the lessons hidden in suffering, the freedom of letting go, and the quiet joy of serving others. At the heart of it all is a simple truth. Peace is not somewhere far away. It is here now in this very breath. You don't have to earn it, chase it, or beg for it. You only have to stop resisting long enough to notice it. Life will still bring storms. Thoughts will still rise and fall. But now you know you don't have to fight them. You don't have to carry them forever. You can meet them with awareness, with compassion, and with release. And in doing so, you discover a deeper freedom, the freedom of being fully alive in this moment. And maybe, just maybe, that freedom doesn't stop with you. When your heart grows lighter, the world around you grows lighter too. When you heal, you help heal the people you touch. When you live with awareness, you remind others that they can live this way too. That is the quiet ripple of wisdom. That is the silent gift of Zen. So as you step back into your daily life, remember, each moment is a chance to practice. Each breath is an invitation, and each act of letting go is a return to your true self. Now, before we part, I want to leave you with a gentle invitation. If these words resonated with you, if you found a little clarity or comfort here, consider joining our journey more deeply. Subscribe to Zen Buddhism Wisdom, share this message with someone who may need it, and keep walking with us as we explore the timeless teachings of the Buddha, brought into the challenges of modern life. Not as followers, not as seekers chasing something outside ourselves, but as friends on the same path, learning to live more mindfully, more compassionately, more freely. Until next time, may you walk with peace in your heart, lightness in your step, and wisdom in your breath.